Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, and welcome to my review for Guardians of the Galaxy. This one's coming in hot from Eidos Montreal, who's best known for their work on the Deus Ex franchise. Now they're moving into Marvel territory, and there's some question marks surrounding that, which I hope to answer in this video. It's releasing October 26th for the price tag of $60 on Xbox, PlayStation, there's a cloud version for Nintendo Switch, as well as PC. Now heading into this one of my question marks was, can this game make me care about the Guardians of the Galaxy? A little story, one of my first dates with my girlfriend, we watched this movie, I fall asleep, now it's a bad look because I'm a sleepy guy, and it looks like I got bad taste, but I could just never really fully get into them. Does this game accomplish that? And also, during my preview period, I had questions about the choices you can make in the game, the gameplay, how fun would it be long term? We're going to go through all of that in this video here today. So if you're new here, you're looking for more reviews, there are plenty more on the way. Consider subscribing for them. Also check out an earlier one that we posted today for Age of Empires 4. Let's get into this. So beginning with the story, the answer is yes. This game did make me care about the Guardians of the Galaxy. This is a surprisingly endearing cast of characters. The banter in this game is off the charts, and the staggering amount of audio cues here must be praised. They're always talking, and they're always having something to say. This sunk in frame one. When I fired up the game, I went off the beaten path to do some exploring, and Rocket Raccoon's over there just talking smack to me the whole time. Star-Lord's talking back to him. You can choose some of the things you want to say in response to him. I love this aspect of the game. It built up the cast of characters, and because they were always jawing at one another, it allowed for those endearing moments where they actually tried to take an emotional step forward with each of the main cast of characters. It let it become much more impactful than I think standing on its own it actually would have been. They were very much humanized characters. Another way I really liked how they built these characters was through some of the flashbacks where you play as Star-Lord. I, again, knew next to nothing about the Guardians of the Galaxy thanks to my snooze fest a number of years ago. So heading into this one, learning about the backstory, seeing some of the inspirations for Star-Lord, I thought not only was it done really well, where it was introduced in a way that didn't feel forced, like the game was screaming at you, lore, look, this is the backstory, but in a way that made sense. And they continue to bring you back there to build past, present, and things that are going to happen in the future, and it leads to much more impact. So the way the story is told, the way they develop the characters must be saluted right away, but that's strictly because of the amount of audio in this game. It must be saluted. There is so much dialogue to the point that you could get worn down by it. They don't stop talking. Whether you go off the beaten path, they always got something to say. Any quest you do, they got something to say. You can pick up collectibles in the world, and you can talk to them about those. There is a stupid amount of dialogue in this game, which for some is great, for some it's not. I think, personally, it was a great thing. And the reason I started off with the characters, not the overall arc and what's happening here, is because the arc itself is set up pretty simply. Guardians of the Galaxy are this ragtag group of misfits. They've got to go out there, pay off a fine that they owe Nova Corp, and it develops from there where suddenly a lot of things are threatening the galaxy and they've got to rise to the occasion. The way it's delivered is in a very Hollywood manner of speaking. When you look at, say, another Marvel game like Spider-Man PS4 and how that was delivered to you, whereas Guardians of the Galaxy makes heavy use of licensed soundtracks, they take a lot of shots that look very eerily familiar from Marvel movies and kind of use them and set that tone. So you'll see a flyby of a ship and that popular song will start playing before they lead into some little banter with the group and then carry on to a much more serious subject. It's that cadence, it's that form of delivery that I think feels very authentic to the actual cinematic experience. Granted, I slept during some of it, but it really called back those feelings I had as I was chuckling along with the movie and various other Marvel releases, and I thought they did a good job capturing that. But otherwise, the arc itself really is based in the characters and not moment-to-moment things happening in the story, which overall wasn't bad, but also wasn't very good. Part of that is because I think it leans very heavily on general comic knowledge. So if you know your comics, I think this story will be really cool, because I don't want to spoil anyone, but they make use of some very unique characters that I had personally not heard of, and I had to do a little research afterwards, which grew my appreciation for the story. But in that moment-to-moment stuff, you're trying to figure out their motivations, their backstory, and the game sort of assumes you know that, and they don't really provide many tools to otherwise help you figure that out. The story is also surprisingly long, which I think is a good thing and a bad thing. It allows these characters to develop, which I have fallen in love with and really adore, but there are times it really drags. There's times where points in the story don't make sense or could have been condensed much easier. Over the course of 16 chapters, each one of them is about at minimum an hour long. Some of them can go a bit shorter than that. So it's a much more meaty package. And when you're done with it, there's also New Game Plus that you can continue on with. Now, when I fired up New Game Plus, we'll talk about gameplay in a little bit, but a lot of the progression I had made did not seemingly carry over, which I thought was really strange, but it could have been a bug, which we will also talk about in a little bit. One of the defining qualities for this game is dialogue choices. I remember when I first saw it during a Square Enix E3 conference, my eyes opened up a little wider and I went, oh, I like where this is going, because we know what they did with Deus Ex, and they're about to do that with Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think is such a weird matchup, but this could be awesome. So how do choices play out in this game? Again, no spoilers here, but there are some pretty simple examples that we can use here. Like, there's a point in the beginning of the game where you can choose to hide one of two things, and whichever one you hide can benefit you in a later chapter. But you're not going to see spiderweb choices, earth-shattering levels of choice and consequence here. It's more like different permutations of the same sequence that we'll all be experiencing. There's one ending to this game, but you're not going to be making a ton of dialogue choices that are going to bring you down a separate path from another gamer. That's not what's going to happen here, and I kind of found that disappointing. The reason for that is not because of what I want, but it begs the question of why the system exists. I think the main reason it does is because there's so much dialogue in this game. There's so much banter. This just lets you be a part of it a little bit more. And it's cool because on the top right corner, they'll tell you when teammates make notes of certain choices you make. And I'm thinking, oh, they can really ramp this up. And they'll remember those things and react in certain ways, and they'll remind you of those choices you made, but it's not frequent. And when they do it, it's in these very minuscule ways where, again, it begs the question, why is this even here? I did think it was cool, but I also think it's a system that needs to be built upon more. Am I asking for the level of betraying characters and saying, like, Star-Lord can go kill everybody? No, I'm not asking for that, but I'm just saying that there were other ways of approaching choice and consequence with this game, which they clearly were toying with a lot, and I felt it came up short ultimately. And that was disappointing to report, because I thought it was a system from a developer that's been proven to do that well, that they didn't really hit the nail on the head with this one. But still, the dialogue is great. The conversations aboard the ship that you can have are fantastic, and that's fueled by collectibles you find in the level, so exploration is worthwhile. But it really is a love letter to these characters and nothing beyond that. When firing this up, I liked how there was a ton of different options here for how much damage Star-Lord can do, how much damage your enemies can do, cooldown meters, shield regen, the cost of elemental shots, etc. So you could really fine-tune and tweak your experience. Again, I don't typically see these many options in action games, and I thought this may remedy one of my complaints during my preview, which is, hey, some of these enemies are really spongy. So, towards the end of the game, when everyone was fully upgraded, I went ahead, tested it out, I ramped up the damage I would do, and I was kind of disappointed because enemies were still really spongy at times. It's unfortunate because the enemy variety is sort of there, but also not there. It's done in a simplistic manner. You have these elemental shots that Star-Lord can use, whether it be wind, fire, ice, lightning, and enemies will have different shields that are immediately deactivated upon landing one of these elemental shots. And then you can call in your guardians with guardian actions, which makes this game one of the most co-op single-player games ever. So effectively, you're just disabling all these enemies and then commanding your teammates to do things. So you can call in Gamora to slice someone down. You can call in Groot to tie down the enemies, or Rocket Raccoon to use a cluster grenade and blow them all up, or bring them all together and then combine that with Gamora's ability to slice them all up. And so what happens is you can eventually get into this great flow, but sometimes it can start to feel like combat sequences are drawn out because everyone's just soaking up a ton of damage. One of the ways they tried to work around this is with what's called the stagger bar. So I mentioned elemental shots and how you're going to use those to target enemy weaknesses. Once they're staggered, they're going to take more damage. I do think the base multiplier here just should have been higher because, again, it feels like you're never doing enough damage. And even when I ramped up, like, hey, I want Star-Lord to do max damage, like the highest amount he can possibly do in the game, there were still enemies that were really spongy. And again, I thought that was kind of disappointing, but the good news is you can at least tweak that. So if you find yourself getting frustrated, going up to the max may be optimal. The Guardian actions can also be used out of combat, so you can tell Rocket Raccoon to go through a tunnel or Gamora to slice down some pipes. This is done to bring a little bit more flair to otherwise pretty linear pathways in the missions that you're going on. This sucks even more when you go back to the same planet multiple times and you're seeing a lot of the same sites. Sometimes they're switching it up a little bit more. You can have Groot make a bridge to cross, and sometimes Sometimes you'll use these to get collectibles, but more times than not, it's just to get to the next objective. And eventually, towards the later part of the game, they just start automatically doing it. You don't even command them to do it, where I think the developers halfway through went, what's the point of this out of combat? It's not like they're doing anything creative with it. It's just a thing they do. And eventually, yeah, the monotony of going down those tunnels, those straight pathways, very minimal exploration, can set in a little bit. And I think that's because the story goes on for so long, where the story is kind of interesting. The characters are great. You want to see more of them. You want to see them keep thriving, keep developing. But eventually they hit a peak, and then the gameplay continues some of its growing pains, as I've already described, and it becomes a moment of other issues of the game start to get a spotlight shined on them. And that's not really accounting for bugs. This game wasn't buggy for a decent amount of time. Like, the first half of this game was really tight, polished, felt good, ran well. Then something happened. My theory is that's one of the reasons why you were going down such linear pathways and being enclosed in areas constantly, because the second the game really opened up and had a larger locale to explore, albeit not much to find within it, you suddenly saw the frames drop a lot. I mean, they went down through the tubes, even to the point where when I was pausing the game and going through the menus, the frame rate was going down. There was times I fell through the map. There were times where quests bugged out and I had to reload checkpoints. Some of those are more forgivable than others because this is a review build, so sometimes we need time for a patch or two. But right now, there was enough there where I feel it's absolutely worth noting to the consumer. As you complete battles, you'll gain experience points, which you can spend on abilities. Abilities go across all 5 members of the Guardians of the Galaxy. As you participate in combat, you'll always get 300 points, which will happen every single encounter. And then you'll get a set amount depending on your momentum meter, which is built up by those team attacks through the Guardian actions, through targeting weaknesses, and that'll keep going up and never go down. So there's a bit of a good loop there, but the ability points themselves are okay. It's the same way I feel about the perks. So as you're exploring the levels, the only thing of note that you're going to grab outside of the occasional text log and collectible through an outfit is going to be these components, which are advanced and standard. You'll go to a workbench and you'll spend it on a variety of perks like faster shield regen or being able to Superman punch someone as Star-Lord. Just very simple perk upgrades, nothing really game-changing except for the first one you unlock in the game, which is an active reload mechanic that makes Star-Lord kind of interesting to play. Think of Star-Lord like Marcus Phoenix, and I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous to say, but as you're shooting people, your guns will overheat every single time. And as long as you time things out and hit that green bar when it's coming down, guess what? You're going to light the enemy up with some bonus damage, your guns will cool down instantly, and you'll keep on the fire. That said, you only play as Star-Lord, and I can understand why some thought that was disappointing, but I understand Eidos Montreal's vision here because I thought when things were clicking together and working, it felt really good. You know, you're flying around doing your abilities, you're calling in the Guardians to do theirs, you're targeting weaknesses, suddenly the damage feels just right, just finely tuned. Things are working in your favor. You're doing flare attacks, so you're Superman kicking people with your jet boots. I mean, there's so much good that's happening there that I feel like if you could switch between everyone, it would defeat the purpose of that. However, again, I think one of the best things about first attempts is there's room to expand, and there's a lot of ideas here between the dialogue and the combat system where I'd love to see Eidos Montreal make a sequel and try to evolve both these systems because there is a lot of potential in them. They're not bad as they are now, but they could absolutely be better over time, and I can see how they can grow from them here. You'll also be able to huddle up. This is a thing where you can call in the Guardians, be like, hey guys, let's settle down here. You got to give them a motivational speech. When you do so, some licensed music will kick up. If you have it activated, you'll run around and it'll suddenly be a party. Everyone's abilities will regenerate. You'll do a ton more damage, and it's kind of where the game gets its own, this is such a romp type of feeling. It's a real identity there, and it embraces it in its entirety, again, when it's all working together, when the AI is functioning properly and not being stupid, pretty much. That said, while the combat is fun, one of the reasons that repetition sets in, despite some just personal gripes, is the bosses don't challenge you to play differently. You're using the same bag of tricks and tools every encounter, whether it be a standard enemy or the biggest boss in the game. You are going to be using the elemental shots, weakening them. You're going to use one of your guardian actions to target that. They never get creative or playful beyond the rule set that has been established. Again, I understand why. This is where the limitations of this system really show its worst side. and I think they could have been better. So the boss fights in this game underwhelmed, and overall, it was this back and forth experience for me. I liked it at the end of the day, but did I love it? No, but I could have totally seen how people would really love this, and I could see how one day I could love this game with some fine-tuning of the good ideas in here. I would have loved for them to go deeper with the dialogue, deeper with the perk system, with the skill tree there, because they're trying to do a lot of things at once. They want to be an action game with some co-op elements. They also want to have RPG systems clearly with the dialogue and how much there is in here. I feel like there was room to do a lot more, but it's not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, and especially as someone who doesn't like Guardians of the Galaxy, I found myself caring by the end of it all, and that is absolutely an accomplishment. Should you go out there, buy this game? Should you wait for a sale of some kind? Should you pass on it entirely? The answer to passing is absolutely not. I think it's worth a playthrough at some point in time. I'm going to give this around a small wait for sale, $45, $50, maybe it drops for Black Friday. Keep an eye out for something like that. But otherwise, I think that there's enough kinks in this where I can't just say go out, spend 60 bucks on this, but waiting for a small sale would probably be worthwhile, and you'd feel a little bit better with your purchase because it would allow for some of those issues I had, that if you experience them too, to be a bit more forgivable for that asking price. But otherwise, it's a solid attempt for a group of characters that honestly I didn't think really felt like they needed a video game. So you can see there's a lot of love and care within the studio at Eidos Montreal, and I'm looking forward to them doing a little bit more with it. So I hope that they make a sequel, get the chance to do so, and build on these ideas because they're pretty good. But overall, those are my thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy from Eidos Montreal. Let me know what you're thinking about this game in the comments down below. Are there any questions that you have that maybe I didn't answer here in this video? Fire away. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. A big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.